All right, we're bringing the Des Moines City Council Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Is there, our first order of business is to approve the minutes from September 26th, 2024.
So moved.
Second?
All right, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is the SB 5290 local project review requirements, and we'll be getting an update from staff.
Thank you. As was mentioned, this is SB Senate Bill 5290, was passed by the legislature in 2023. This is a requirement under local project review. It sets project time review for planning review times, in which we have to meet certain review times, prescribed times for us to review planning applications. There are different requirements on when the time period starts and when it stops and how we calculate it. And it also includes some reporting requirements at the end of each year. Commerce is still putting out all of their guidance, and so we're still figuring all of that out. However, one of the big things related to this is there are financial penalties if we don't meet those turnaround times. However, there's some benefits that the city can do, including passing a resolution that protects us from those financial penalties. And there's a menu of items that we can choose among in order to protect us from those financial penalties. I reviewed those among the menu with our city attorney and kind of tried to pick among those low-hanging fruit, and that's what I have in front of you to take a look at. And those three that we looked at include maintaining and budgeting for on-call permitting assistance when permit volumes or staffing levels change rapidly. We already keep on-call contracts and budget available, so this is pretty much something we already do. Develop regulations which only require public hearings for permit applications that are required to have public hearings by statute. Again, in review of our regulations, it looks like that's something we already do already. We don't require any public hearings for anything that we don't require a public hearing by statute already. And then developing regulations which make pre-application meetings optional at the request of the applicant, then rather a requirement. Again, within our code, there is already an out within our code that says at the request, the director may authorize an exemption from the pre-application meeting. So within this resolution, we can make it that we will give that out at the request of the applicant under this regulation. So even though we do currently make it a requirement for certain types of applications, we can say that if someone formally requests it under the request of 5290, we will not require that pre-application, even though we highly recommend it. And so that way we would cover all these three items. And so that would get us about, I think it's under the code 5 years. And then if we're not meeting our turnaround times half of the time, then we would either have to adopt more of these selections, or we can adopt our own timelines. And so once we understand, now that we're going to kind of track our turnaround times, we can actually come back to the council and choose what our turnaround times will be, and then make sure we're meeting those turnaround times. But since we don't know what our turnaround times are, because usually when we look at turnaround times now, it's from when they submit to when we approve, but that's not how we calculate this, because you don't count the time that it's back with the applicant. So we've never kind of tracked, okay, we have it, now it's back, now we have it back, now it's back, now we have it back. So we didn't really have a stop clock in the way our software selects that. And so that's a new update that the software has had to implement to figure out how to track those exact number of days that it's only with us. And so now we're working on that for the new timing and the way this bill does that. So once we know exactly how many days it's only with us, we'll be able to bring back those timelines and see whether we're meeting what's in the state statute or whether we need to adopt our own timelines. But the state does allow us to adopt our own timelines. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Colleagues?
I'll go ahead. Harry, you go first.
Deputy Mayor Steinmetz?
Thanks. You say we're not tracking, well, we are tracking just the entry date and the end point on times, correct?
Our software we can run reports based on when something was submitted and when it was approved. So our software can run those reports, but it's not something that we've normally had to report on in the past. So it's not something we've ever really looked at specifically.
And do we have the new software that can count? Do we have some software that can come up with that kind of configuration where it only counts when it's in our hands and not when
Cor-
it's back with the.
Correct. So the software we use, Permit Tracks, has a piece that's been added. So it's an add-on that they've already turned on to our software. So I've started working with our staff to learn how to use what's called like the stopwatch feature.
Okay. And so we should be able to get that data
Moving forward.
moving forward.
Correct.
How much, I mean, is this a 6 month gonna give us an accurate picture of that, or how long do you think we're gonna need?
It's hard to say because each application, it depends on how long. Sometimes an applicant keeps, they take 3 months to resubmit. So it's really hard to say how long it takes on certain applications. Big projects, take sometimes, if there's lots of SEPA, related, it can take over a year to process if it's back and forth a lot. If it's something very small, just a site plan, really simple, it easily can, those go faster.
And the pre-application meeting, I mean, I know when we built our house, that was a great way to start.
It is.
And our builders who did the interaction with the city for us, they started with the pre-application stuff and worked way through it, and it made the process much smoother. So, do you think that many people are going to want to opt out?
I'm hoping not. We're still going to highly recommend it. And we don't necessarily have to advertise that it's an option to opt out, but if someone asks for the opt out, we would give it to them under this regulation.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Buxton?
Thank you. So, boy, a few questions. So, when just listening to your answers to the deputy mayor, how does the option of eliminating the pre-application meeting help our staff to reduce the permit time? Isn't it like what was it, 45 business days and 90 calendar days or something like that? So how does it almost seems like it could increase it?
It could increase it because if someone doesn't know how to process, but I think that the state legislature felt that by making it optional, it reduces their time because they don't have to wait for the pre-application meeting.
Okay.
So I think that's why it's a menu item.
So with this, I'm just wondering about it statewide, with this process now coming into play, does it actually end up encouraging different, planning and development staff to break their processes up into phases so that we're never going to get this done in this, so what we're going to do is we're going to permit this group of items and then we're going to wait and permit this other group?
We're not exactly sure what the outcome of this is going to be. What we're hearing from in discussions with a lot of the other directors that I've been having, we actually think what's going to be the result of this legislation is that we're actually going to see a lot of more denied permits. Instead of continuing to work with someone to try and get it right and continue the process, when we run out of time, they're just gonna end up being denied and make them reapply. Because if you're gonna run out of time, instead of hitting that financial penalty or instead of running the risk of reporting at the end of the year and looking bad, and when your report comes out, you're gonna end up denying the project and having them reapply. So,
and then they would have to repay their fees, right?
if you're in a flat fee-based system, that's correct. And so depending on or you work a system where a reapplication fee ends up being reduced. Maybe you work on a process due to this situation. If you just deny it due to time running out, maybe you don't repay the full fee. It's a reduced situation. So there's all sorts of situations, but that's what I'm hearing is that this bill doesn't necessarily end up helping. That it's not going to end up reducing timelines, that more likely you're going to end up seeing more denials, because what we try and do, and some of the times it takes so long, is because we are trying to help the customer.
Yeah.
We're trying to help walk someone through the process. We don't always get the response we need, and we're continually asking for the same thing over and over again. And this bill is actually a little bit of confusion on whether the time actually even restarts if we didn't get something. So even though we may start a second review, if we didn't receive something we originally asked for, the bill's not actually clear whether you restart the time, because you've gotten a resubmittal, but it says unless you've received everything you've asked for, you may not have even restarted your clock. So how you're gonna calculate the time, there's gonna be a lot up in the air until you start seeing legal arguments coming back legally, some kind of case law on how this gets interpreted. There's a lot of questions in this bill on what's going to happen. But either way, we wanted to protect ourselves from having the automatic fee refund on not meeting the deadlines, which is why we wanted to pass a resolution that protects us from those fee penalties.
Yeah.
So even if we don't meet the timelines, we're not subject to the fee penalty, so therefore we don't have to worry about the timelines. After a year, we figured we'd see all of our timelines, then come back, adopt our own timelines, and then even if we don't meet our own timelines, we're still protected from the fee.
Oh,
That's kind of my thought process initially.
interesting. So back to one other pre-app question. So the other thing I was thinking, for example, how many pre-app meetings turn into projects? Or maybe the opposite question, how many pre-app meetings don't turn into projects? And so is that part of the thing where they're trying to eliminate futility up front, so to keep staff on working on actual projects that are going forward? Is that part of the equation here, is to eliminate pre-app meetings where you have to get everybody from all over the city together in one room, and that all of these people could be working on
Yeah.
permit projects?
Unfortunately, I don't have the number for that. I didn't look that up. I don't think that the state was thinking that at all. Again, I think
Okay.
they just think that it's a reduction in time. A lot of times, some cities, if you're scheduling a pre-app, it might be a month out. That's taking a month out of you submitting your project if you have to wait for that pre-app meeting.
Right.
So it just depends on scheduling and availability for some cities, since this is a statewide bill. So I think it's just a timing, and we can still highly recommend, still highly tell people that we really suggest you do this pre-app. It's going to help you through the process. It's going to give you a step-by-step guide on what you need to do.
Save you more than a month on the backside.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
But, okay.
It's an easy one that our code really already gives people at the request an out. So we wouldn't have to change our municipal code in order to basically apply these requirements. Just a resolution without coming back and changing our municipal code.
Okay. That's all I had, Chair.
Very good. Well, I think my questions have been answered, and to protect the city, I suggest that we come back with a proposal for a resolution to the full council exactly to protect ourselves, but with a timeline that we revisit in a year with some data that we figure out what our timeline's going to be, being one of those that was told that I would have my permit in 6 weeks with a engineered stamped set of plans, that all it was a CYA agreement to my permit, and it took over 14 weeks to get my permit. I mean, we need to decide on if it's going to be 6 weeks or 14 weeks. And I guess there is one question in there. Is this covers single family all the way up through multifamily, all development?
So these are just planning applications. These are not building permit requirements.
Okay.
So this is just the planning application process. And it does not include subdivisions. So it's other types like site plans and variances and conditional use permits and those kinds of
I
things.
think it's a no-brainer. I think we cover our butts with this proposal and resolution, and then we just see where we're at in the year.
Yeah, and that's my intent, so.
Do I have my colleagues' consent with that?
Yes.
Yeah, and I do have one more
Yeah.
question. Yes, absolutely.
Please, Mayor.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk right now about AI.gov or AIGov.com or whatever. This AI coming into a lot of government processes and expediting all sorts of things. Like you just plug in, like I can see it doing our comp plan in 5 minutes versus in a year, that's what they like to tell you.
Right.
But do you hear anything about some of these processes, apps coming down the line, AI doing some of this stuff for you?
I don't really see AI doing it for you. I've been doing a lot of research and working with a lot of experts on AI and questions about how it could help our processes. Really, there's a lot still out there in how concerns with government due to transparency and issues that we have, because some of our stuff, as soon as you put something into an application, a lot of those requirements, all of a sudden it becomes open, and not all of our documents can be open records. And so there's a lot of still what's available, what's not. There's just not enough known out there yet for government agencies to use it. So I think there's still a ways before I see what we can and can't do with AI. There are different organizations that I have been following to find out what's available and when. So there's a lot of interesting things available, but I see it more in time in things like writing press releases, a little bit easier, and other write-ups that are a little bit easier, but I don't see it reviewing site plans and processing things like that.
Well, thanks for looking into it.
Mhm.
It's encouraging to know that you're kind of on it, so appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Is that it, colleagues?
Yeah, those are all the questions I have for this item.
All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah.
And I just a motion to adjourn the economic development meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All right, yeah, we're adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you.